The first time my ex-wife bribed our kids to lie about me in court. I thought I was going to throw up right there on the witness stand. My name's Mark Sullivan, I'm 42, and for 20 years I raised 7 children in Cedar Falls, Ohio. Only one of them shared my blood, my oldest, Ryan, who's 19 now. The other 6? They were all from my ex-wife's affairs. Every single one. But when their fathers bailed and she threatened to dump them into foster care, I couldn't let it happen. I'd grown up in the system myself. I knew exactly what that kind of loneliness does to a kid. So I took them in. All of them. For 2 decades, my life was nothing but work and parenting. 80-hour weeks at the auto plant, shoving down vending machine dinners so my kids could have cereal in the mornings and medicine when they got sick. And I didn't resent it. Not once. Because when you've been a foster kid yourself, the sound of little voices shouting, "Dad," feels like winning the lottery every single day. But here's the thing nobody tells you, sacrifice doesn't make you untouchable. I thought my ex, Laura, had finally moved on after our divorce. She barely visited, barely called, barely remembered birthdays. Then the second she saw me juggling work and 7 kids alone, she started looking for weaknesses. I'll never forget the first time I begged her for help. I had a 4-day work trip in Chicago, a client presentation I'd spent 6 months preparing for. It was the kind of meeting that could keep food on the table for another year. I called Laura and asked if she could just stay with the kids. For days. That's all. She laughed. I have plans, Mark. You figure it out. They're your kids too, I said. And that's when she twisted the knife. Maybe I should just call CPS. Tell them you can't provide. I froze. She knew exactly what that meant to me. Foster kids don't ever call CPS. We grow up with that fear in our bones, the fear that someone will take everything away. So I called her family instead. Every single one of them. 23 people. Her mom, who lived in a 6-bedroom house in Westchester, New York, claimed her back was too fragile to watch her grandkids, even though she posted Pilates selfies 3 times a week. Her brother, a high-powered lawyer, said his homeowner's insurance didn't cover other people's kids. They all had excuses. Boats. Summer homes. Empty guest rooms. But no time for 7 kids who were flesh and blood. So I did the only thing I could. I stuffed all 7 into my beat-up Chevy Suburban, 5 seats between 7 kids, and drove 8 hours straight to Chicago. Emma, the 14-year-old, cradled the baby in the back. Ryan had his brother on his lap. The twins shared one seatbelt. If child services had seen us, I would have been arrested on the spot. That car became our home for 4 days. The hotel rooms were for clients only. Company policy. So my kids sat in a sweltering parking lot while I pitched software solutions to executives inside. I'd sprint out during breaks, handing out juice boxes, fast food bags, diapers. Emma changed the baby on the floor mats while executives in suits stared through the conference room windows. Whispering. Judging. One afternoon, my boss pulled me aside. This is unprofessional, Mark. It reflects poorly on the company. I looked him in the eye. I had no choice. He just shook his head. There's always a choice. Easy words from a man with a wife at home, 2 nannies, and a vacation house on Lake Michigan. Easy to say when you've never known what it's like to be abandoned. I gave that presentation with spit up on my shirt, and I closed the deal anyway. Saved my job by a thread. But the damage was already done. When I got back to Cedar Falls, Laura had already filed for custody. The hearing was 3 months later. She showed up in a brand new suit, fresh blonde highlights, and a Harvard-educated lawyer at her side. I showed up in the same suit I'd worn to weddings and funerals, clutching a binder full of medical records and grocery receipts. I knew Laura didn't actually want the kids. She just wanted to win. To prove she could take from me the only thing I cared about. Emma was the first to testify. Sweet Emma, who used to make me Father's Day cards out of construction paper even though I wasn't her real dad. She sat there in front of the judge, eyes glassy, and said in a rehearsed monotone, "He yells at us all the time." I felt my stomach drop. Then came Ryan. "He drives too fast. I don't feel safe." One by one, they repeated the same lines. The same lies. Every word carefully crafted by Laura. Every glance stolen toward her, like she was their puppeteer. I sat there, helpless, while 20 years of parenting unraveled in 30 minutes of testimony. And the worst part? I could see it in their faces. They knew. They knew what they were doing. Emma's voice cracked halfway through. She cried real tears, not because of what she was saying, but because she knew she was betraying me. My lawyer objected, saying the kids had been coached. The judge didn't buy it. 7 children don't all tell the same story by accident. That was the day I lost everything. And walking out of that courthouse, the silence from my kids hurt more than anything. No eye contact. No goodbye. Just 7 little backs turned away from me forever. But here's the thing. That wasn't even the worst part. Not by a long shot. I stood frozen on those courthouse steps for 5 full minutes after the gavel dropped. 7 kids gone. 20 years erased with a single ruling. My legs finally carried me to the parking garage, where I sat behind the wheel of that dying Suburban until my hand stopped shaking enough to turn the key. When I got home, the silence nearly crushed me. No noise. No spilled cereal. No cartoons blaring from the living room. Just 7 empty beds, each one staring at me like an accusation. That night, instead of sleeping, I opened my laptop and pulled out every file I'd saved over the years. Screenshots of Laura's texts where she begged me to take the kids because she couldn't handle them. Photos of the bruises I'd patched up after she'd left them alone for days. Bank statements showing every child support dollar she blew on herself while I covered groceries and rent. I hadn't kept those things because I thought I'd need them. I'd kept them because somewhere deep down, I knew Laura couldn't be trusted. Around 1 a.m., my phone buzzed. Emma's name lit up my screen. My chest tightened. I almost didn't answer. I wasn't sure I could handle hearing her voice. But then I opened the message. "I'm sorry, Dad. Mom made us say those things. She promised us new phones if we lied." I read it 3 times, then took a screenshot with shaking hands. Another buzz. She said if we didn't, we'd be split up into foster care. I didn't know what else to do. Then Jake texted from a different phone, "Mom said you were dangerous. Said we'd never see each other again if we told the truth." Every word added another brick to the pile of evidence I was building. Proof that Laura had scripted their testimony. Proof that I wasn't crazy. The next morning, I called my public defender's office, desperate to show someone what the kids had sent me. The secretary sighed and said my lawyer had already moved on to other cases. Appeals rarely succeed, she told me. If you want to fight this, you'll need a private attorney. A private attorney. On my salary. When I was already drowning. I went back to work, but walking into that plant felt like walking into a morgue. People avoided my eyes. They'd seen the kids crammed into my Suburban in Chicago. They'd heard whispers. My boss sent me an email moving up my performance review to Friday, with a not-so-subtle warning, attendance is mandatory. That afternoon, scrolling through my phone, I saw Laura's Facebook post. She'd written about how she was finally free of toxic influence and how her babies were safe now. The comments flooded in. Congratulations. Prayers. Praise. Not one mention of what it actually meant to raise 7 children. I drove past her apartment complex that evening. I told myself it was just curiosity, but I couldn't stay away. 7 kids in a cramped 2-bedroom. Through the window I saw Emma feeding the baby while Jake tried to keep the twins from fighting over a toy. No sign of Laura. Then my phone rang. Jake's voice came through, whispering, "Dad, Mom left again." The baby's sick. Emma doesn't know what to do. I froze. If I went inside, Laura could accuse me of harassment. But if I didn't, it's my baby and my baby was in danger. I hung up and dialed 911. I told the dispatcher I was a concerned neighbor who'd heard children crying. Then I parked a block away and watched the flashing lights pull up. Paramedics carried the baby out, fever burning at 103. Officers followed with clipboards, documenting every detail, 7 minors, no adult present. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again. Blocked number. A nurse's voice. Mr. Sullivan? You're still listed as the emergency contact for 7 minors brought in by ambulance. I drove like a madman to Mercy Hospital. When I pushed through the pediatric ward doors, I saw all of them lined up on beds and chairs. The baby hooked up to and 4. Emma holding a nebulizer mask to her face. The twins clinging to each other like scared puppies. I rushed forward, but the nurse intercepted me, her eyes flicking to the visitor log. You're not barred from seeing them, she said quietly. But keep it calm. 2 hours later, Laura finally walked in. Fresh manicure. Hair curled. Designer heels clicking on the linoleum. She claimed she'd just stepped out for groceries. The nurse's pen scratched furiously across her clipboard, documenting every word. The next morning, a social worker named Ms. Thompson walked in with a briefcase so stuffed the latches barely closed. She asked me about Emma's inhaler prescription. About Jake's ADHD medication. About who usually took the kids to appointments. I answered every question, showing her my phone calendar, color-coded with years of medical visits and school events. She gave me a look I'll never forget. A look that said, I see what's really going on here, even if I can't say it yet. That should have been a relief. But instead, it made me realize something terrifying. Laura wasn't just neglectful. She wasn't just careless. She was playing a game. And if she was willing to use our kids as weapons once, she'd do it again. And the next time, it might break them completely. The first week after the hospital visit, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Emma holding that nebulizer mask, whispering, "I'm sorry, Dad." I couldn't stop replaying it. Not just the lies in court. Not just the ambulance. But the look in her eyes, the same hollow, terrified look I'd seen before. The thing is, I'd seen it in my own mirror once. I grew up in foster care in Toledo, Ohio. Bounced from house to house. I was the problem kid, not because I broke rules, but because I wouldn't stop protecting the younger ones. I remember being 12, standing between a foster mom and a 6-year-old she was about to hit. I took the belt instead. That night, I wrote in my caseworker's notebook, "If nobody protects us, we're just practice for monsters." That's why I'd taken in Laura's kids. Why I worked myself half dead. I swore I'd never let another child look in the mirror with that same emptiness. But now? It was happening all over again. To them. On my watch. 3 days later, I drove past Laura's apartment on my way home from work. Ryan was sitting on the steps, backpack at his feet. I pulled over. "Where's your mom?" I asked. He shrugged. Some guy came over. They went out. It was 9:30 at night. He was 19, sure, but his little brothers and sisters were inside, alone. My stomach knotted. Before I could even process it, Ryan added, "She sold Emma's tablet. Said we needed grocery money. But then she came home with a new purse." I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. That tablet was how Emma did her homework. And Laura had pawned it off for designer junk. The next morning, I found a certified letter in my mailbox. It was from Laura's brother, the big-shot attorney in Manhattan. He accused me of withholding property belonging to the children. Their bikes. Their game consoles. Even birthday presents I'd bought with my own money. He threatened to sue me for theft if I didn't return them within 10 business days. I laughed out loud. A hollow, bitter laugh that didn't feel like me at all. She was selling the kids' belongings for cash, and somehow I was the thief? That same week, Ms. Thompson from CPS showed up at my house for what she called a routine home inspection. But her questions weren't routine. "What time do the twins go to bed?" she asked. "How does Emma take her inhaler? Does she need a spacer? Which one is allergic to strawberries?" I answered everything. Then I pulled out my phone and showed her the calendar I still kept, even after losing custody. Every appointment, every school event, every medicine refill. I still tracked it all. She flipped through my notes, and I saw it again, that flash of recognition in her eyes. The kind that said, "You're the parent here." Not her. But even with Ms. Thompson quietly on my side, I knew Laura wouldn't stop. One night, Ryan called me from a payphone. His voice shook. "Mom's new boyfriend moved in. He screams at the twins if they cry. Emma tries to keep them quiet all the time." I told him to document everything. Save receipts. Write down dates. He sighed. "Dad, I don't know if I can." I understood too well. Kids shouldn't have to carry proof of their own abuse. That weekend, I started cleaning out the closet where I kept old paperwork. Buried in the back was a manila folder from 25 years ago, my own foster care records. I sat on the floor and read my social worker's notes, hands trembling. Remarkable resilience. Protective instincts toward younger children. Shows leadership when caring for others. It hit me like a gut punch. I'd forgotten those words. Forgotten that somebody once saw me as worth saving. But if I forgot them, if my kids couldn't, they needed proof too. Proof that they weren't crazy. That the lies Laura fed them weren't the truth. And then came the voicemail. Emma's voice, barely above a whisper. "Mom says you abandoned us because we're not really yours. She shows us websites about foster care. She says we'll be split up forever if we don't do what she says." Her voice cracked. "Please stop trying to get us back, Dad. You're making it worse." The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, phone pressed to my ear, my heart splintering. For the first time in 20 years, I felt something I hadn't felt since I was a kid in that group home. Helpless. And that's when I realized Laura wasn't just sabotaging me. She was rewiring their entire reality. And if I didn't stop her soon, I might lose them forever. But I had no idea just how far she was willing to go. Not even close. The call came at 2:07 in the morning. I was half asleep when the phone lit up. Unknown number. My chest went tight before I even answered. "Mr. Sullivan." It was a nurse. Her voice was clipped, professional. "Your daughter Emma is here. She was admitted after an overdose. She's asking for you." I don't remember getting dressed. I don't remember the drive. I only remember sprinting through the fluorescent halls of Mercy Hospital, my heart hammering so loud I couldn't hear anything else. When I walked into that room, Emma was pale as paper. Tubes snaked out of her arms. The beeping monitor was the only sound in the world. She turned her head toward me, lips cracked, voice barely there. I couldn't lie anymore. "Dad." The word split me open. Before I could answer, a social worker stepped into the room. Clipboard in hand. Steel in her eyes. She wasn't like the others I dealt with, the ones who shuffled papers and muttered about insufficient evidence. No, this one looked like she'd been waiting for Laura to slip up. "Emma," she said gently, "can you tell me what you meant by that?" And Emma did. She told her everything. About the index cards with scripts Laura made them memorize. About the threats that they'd never see each other again if they slipped up. About the phones and clothes she promised as payment. The social worker wrote furiously, page after page. When Emma finished, she turned to me. "Mr. Sullivan, I'm filing an emergency petition. Be ready to take all 7 children within 72 hours. Laura showed up 6 hours later, reeking of perfume and casino smoke. She stormed into Emma's room, demanding to know why this nonsense was being written down. The social worker didn't even look up. Just kept writing. That's when I knew the tide was finally turning. But Laura wasn't going down quietly. The emergency hearing was scheduled for the following week. I walked into that courtroom with a pro bono lawyer from my parent support group and 3 inches of evidence. Laura walked in with her high-priced attorney, Andrew Holloway, and her sister Linda at her side like she was the Queen of Cedar Falls. Judge Wells flipped through Emma's psychiatric hold paperwork, her face darkening with every page. She called the first witness, Ms. Thompson from CPS. Thompson didn't hold back. She presented report after report, ER visits, missed medications, kids left alone. She said it as carefully as she could, but the picture was clear. Laura had been neglecting these children for years. Laura's lawyer tried to object, but Judge Wells snapped, overruled. Then came the surprise home inspections. The investigator went to Laura's apartment first. They found 3 kids sleeping on the floor, an eviction notice taped to the door, and an empty fridge except for beer and takeout boxes. Then they came to my house. Beds neatly made. Medicine labeled. Food stacked in the pantry. Homework stations ready. Photos were taken. Documentation entered. Back in court, Laura's mask started to crack. She stood up and screamed, "Those aren't even his kids. Why should he get them?" The court reporter typed every word. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. The next day, Jake testified. He couldn't even look at her. His voice came steady through the screen as he explained how his mom forced them to practice lies until they sounded natural. She said if we didn't do it right, we'd never see each other again. Dad never hurt us. Mom just used us. His words cut sharper than anything I could have said. And then, as if the universe wanted to expose Laura completely, her new boyfriend was arrested that same week on drug charges. The prosecutor produced text messages from his phone, complaints about the annoying kids and threats about handling Sullivan if he didn't back off. Laura claimed she had no idea. The prosecutor held up a signed lease with both their names on it. Dated 6 months ago. Her family started peeling away. First her brother withdrew as her lawyer. Then Linda stopped showing up. By the 3rd week, Laura sat alone at her table with a court-appointed attorney who looked like he wanted out. But Laura wasn't finished. During a recess, she walked straight toward me in the hallway, eyes burning. "You'll regret this, Mark. You think you've won? I'll destroy you." I didn't answer. Didn't give her the satisfaction. But her words rattled in my chest all night. Because here's the thing about Laura. She wasn't bluffing. And when she played her last card in court, the most vile accusation a parent can make, I finally realized she would rather burn everything to the ground than let me win. And I wasn't ready for what came next. Not even close. Laura's last card hit like a bomb. She stood up in court, chin high, and said the words no parent ever wants to hear attached to their name. "Your Honor, he's been molesting the children for years." The room went silent. I couldn't breathe. Judge Wells leaned forward. "If that's true, Ms. Sullivan, why has this never been mentioned in any of your prior filings? Why did you leave these children in his care for 2 decades? Laura's mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. No answers. Just flailing. Then the guardian ad litem stepped up, stone-faced, and recommended that each child give a victim impact statement. One by one, they did. Emma went first, voice steady but eyes locked on the judge. "I want to go home to my real dad." Jake followed. "Mom never really loved us. She just used us to hurt him." Even the twins, speaking through their advocate, said, "We miss Daddy. We want to go home." And then Sarah, only 7 years old, whispered the words that cracked Laura open like glass. Mom was never really a mom at all. Laura's composure shattered. She screamed, lunged at me, shouting that I destroyed her family. Security dragged her back while Judge Wells scribbled furiously. That should have been enough. But fate wasn't done. Jake's lawyer pulled out his tablet and pressed play. 10 videos. All time-stamped. All with Laura's voice in the background. Coaching them. Threatening them. Promising phones if they lied. Telling them I'd abandoned them. Forcing them to rehearse testimony until Jake cried. The courtroom gasped. Laura's face drained of color. Her own sister Linda, who had once defended her, provided the final nail. A text message Laura had sent her 3 months earlier. If I can't have the kids, I'll make sure Mark can't either. I'll destroy them before I let him win. The judge's gavel hit the desk so hard I jumped. By the end of that week, Laura was under criminal investigation for child endangerment, custodial interference, and fraud. Her lawyer quit on the spot. And me? For the first time in years, I walked out of court with all 7 of my children behind me. The ride home in that rented van was chaos. The twins sang some nonsense song about going home. Emma cried quietly but leaned against my shoulder. Jake clutched the baby like his life depended on it. When we pulled onto our street, I saw balloons tied to the mailbox. Neighbors. Nurses. Teachers. Even the parents from my support group. They'd thrown us a homecoming party in the yard. Tables of food. Signs that said, "Welcome home, Sullivan kids." That night, all 7 piled into my bed to watch a movie. Emma made popcorn. The twins fought over the remote until I took it. Ryan, my oldest, whispered, "You didn't give up on us." I looked at him, my voice breaking. "I never will." The next morning, I woke at 5:30 like always. I poured batter onto the griddle, shaping dinosaur pancakes for the twins. Emma's strawberry syrup ready. Jake's bacon extra crispy. One by one, they stumbled downstairs. Sleepy, messy-haired, alive. We sat at that scratched old table, eating together like we had for 20 years. And in that moment, I realized something that no judge, no lawyer, no court paper could ever erase. Family isn't blood. Family isn't signatures. Family is showing up. Every day. No matter what. So I'll keep waking up. I'll keep making breakfast for 8. And I'll mean it every single time when I say to them. More than all the stars.